The revolution will begin in Seattle. Part 1 is the story of an event that occurred in 1919 in which a labor dispute gets out of hand. And there's nothing jokey about the meaning about the beginning of a revolution. There are ambitions amongst some of the participants of this that the event will get outside the borders of Seattle and become a national revolution. But don't worry that nobody will be harmed. So let's start, just jump into it. This is Seattle in 1919, approximately. It's a city of 330,000. The First World War has just finished, and so the city is a bit of bulging a little bit because there have been approximately 20,000 new people who have come to Seattle for war work. Also, it's the middle of winter. It's January of the year, and Seattle is the sort of home port for people from Alaska or people who work in the woods. They winter over in Seattle, and so there are problems connected with that. There isn't enough housing, and the housing is too expensive, and things, problems of that sort that add to the tensions that are natural in any city. So now 300,000 is, I should also mention, by itself, because the towns that we usually think about largely don't exist outside Seattle, or they're extremely small. The major political issue in Seattle is the issue of, and it's been going on for a long time, of gambling, of drinking, of prostitution. It's the moral state of the city. And Seattle is a pretty bourgeois city that worries about this, and so the elections are always constantly, how small can we make this immoral center of Seattle, given that we have all these war workers, and then we have these lumber people, single men coming into Seattle. And I've presented this one because it said that Frederick Trump lived in Seattle. Frederick Trump was our president's grandfather, and there was always a claim that he had ran an immoral cafe, and that there were private rooms for ladies. Other parties that I trust equally well say that that's not true. But anyway, it would be at this location. Seattle is also notable because it has a really well-developed labor situation. There are about 110 labor unions in Seattle, and they have come together and created a center, and it's probably the most developed labor market in the United States at the time. This is a picture. This is a picture of the labor center for Seattle, and it's about up near Virginia Mason Hospital. It's so well developed that this labor center owns its own newspaper, and it's the only labor-run newspaper in the United States. So you can see the development of that unionization has proceeded quite a ways. It's just, as I said, past a little bit, 2 months past the First World War. And in the preparation for the First World War, there are parades. And at one of those parades is a bomb goes off, and it's traced or not traced to this man, Tom Mooney, who is convicted of it and is waiting his execution. This occurs in California. And it's pretty well agreed that the whole conviction of Tom Mooney and his friend is illegitimate. But anyway, he is convicted. And so nationally, there is a desire to use this opportunity to get him out of prison and to, but it doesn't work out completely well, and his sentence is commuted and he spends a lot of time in prison. But the way to get him out of prison is a national general strike. And I should say something about what a general strike means to these people. It's going to mean a lot of different things. But the origin of the general strike is a European idea that if certain unions go on strike, they will make it impossible for other activities to occur, and that this will make it impossible for further activities to occur. It's sort of like a whirlpool that's drawing in more water and getting more and more unsteady at the same time. Well, that idea never really got very far, but it's always the idea that is haunting the bourgeoisie, is that the labor will somehow become so active that it brings down the whole of society. And so when I say the revolution will begin, it will be a labor event of the general strike source. The last time I heard the words general strike was with Indivisible about a month ago, when they decided their general strike would be not to shop at Amazon. Okay, so 20-some people of the labor leadership in Seattle go to Chicago to take part in this planned national general strike, which never occurs. It's just shelved at some point. But when they come back to Seattle, and this is a picture of Seattle's either King Street Station or Union Station, they are met and they are told that a general strike nonetheless is going to occur. It's going to happen in Seattle. That the people, the non-leadership of Seattle, has decided on the general strike. And immediately the leadership realizes this is a terrible idea, because a failed general strike will result in the collapse of this unionized city that they have created. That is, the failed general strike will mean that people will stop paying their dues. They have no reason to be in a union that fails at its activities. And so they're worried about this, and yet they go along with the idea. And now how this non-leadership got together and decided on having a general strike, I'll try to cover a little bit later. One of the people on the train is Anna Louise Strong. She's a writer for the Seattle Union Record, the newspaper, the only labor newspaper in the United States. And she looks at it, she's much more radical than most, and she says that we were red in the ranks and yellow in office. She has a wonderful way for words. This is a picture that was taken before the war, so we're going to go backward for just a second. This is the Preparedness Days parade in Seattle, and you can see that it is a wonderful parade. They've created this enormous flag that stretches all the way across the 2nd Avenue. You've got bands and marching groups, and as far as the eye can see, the people. This is not sponsored by the city. buildings along the route have put out banners and flags. It's a tremendous event. And I'm showing it to you just to say that this war, which is the First World War, is very well supported and welcomed by most people in Seattle. During the war, the major effect upon Seattle and most communities was that people went to war or went to work. And in Seattle, well, the shipyards, again, are the major experience of the war. This is a poster that went up around the country called Together We Win. And it's just to show you what you're already seeing. It's sailors, army soldiers, and workmen all joined in arms. And this will come back to in other forms later. So and they're all, of course, very happy to take part in this patriotic service. There are some people who don't want to do patriotic service, and that's the international workers of the world. And you undoubtedly have heard about them. They're the IWW, or also called the Wobblies, and they are basically the lowest paid workers, the itinerant workers, the least skilled workers, and they have an idea that basically that they make up the majority of the workforce and that they should play a bigger role. And when they say play a bigger role, they mean in a sort of tough guy sort of way, and then you can sort of see that in this picture. They also want to take over the unions, or at least there is a movement amongst them, and they have not only IWW cards, or they also get themselves into the AFL unions, and they are seen as, well, you can get it from the name that's given to them. They're called borers. They've bored their way into the union, and it sounds like they're termites, or anyway. Their idea of change is a bit severe. This is an IW, you can't see it in this picture, an IW hand holding the knife. When the knife tells you, their idea of change involves violence. And so they aren't the only group that is intending violence as a means of change, but you can see that capitalism is their enemy, and it's the source of child labor up to the upper right, and war up to the upper left, and prostitution to the west. And anyway, they've had a sizable history in Seattle. The first battle that I know of went back to 1913 when the fleet came into Seattle, and the IWW went down to meet them, and they got into fights. The IWW is, like many of the labor unions of the time, is more than just a group of laborers. They run shops, and they have a printing press, and they do a lot. And so you can, when you look at this building carefully, you'll notice that the windows have been knocked out above, and it's been attacked. And I think in this case, it was attacked by sailors, but it's often attacked by the police. And one of the interesting things for me in reading this is my idea of police enforcement is very different than the 1919 idea of police enforcement. The police break into these stores or these printing presses without a warrant, without anything. And one of the policemen just after the war says, "I got tired of reading the literature, so we busted in." There isn't any idea of constitutional matters of having judges approve warrants and such that. with the police force is very different than it is today. Another party opposed to the war, and they're pretty widespread, is this woman that you see on the left, sort of granny-like looking lady, who sends out literature telling people not to take part in the draft. And she's arrested. I mean, this is obviously, in modern terms, simply freedom of speech in our day. But she's arrested and sentenced to 10 years in jail. Ultimately, it's commuted down to 28 months. But during the trial, she asked that the labor writer, Anna Louise Strong, to come join her at the defense table, and that's Anna Louise Strong on the right. She's about 34 years old at the time she joins this. I don't know, the picture on the right always puzzles me. I don't know what party she was going to it, but Anna Louise Strong is already a member of the Seattle School Board. She's a prominent figure, and she's been put up on the school board by the Boilermakers Union, part of the shipyard, biggest union in the shipyard group, and she's elected to office, and because she took part in the defense of Oliveiro, a recall vote is asked for, and she is removed from office by public acclaim. And one of her comments is always strange. She says, "I don't know what they're so mad about this girl on the school board." She's 34 years old. But anyway, she is removed from the school board in March of 1918, so it's during the war, and she's elected by almost the same margin that she loses is Ole Hansen, and Ole Hansen is elected to the job of mayor. He is, like most people of the time, a businessman, or most of the mayors of Seattle, a businessman. And he's on the divide, he's on the side of more morals and more and less vice in Seattle. He has been elected to state office. In 1909, he was elected as representative, and he's just a terrible opportunist. I rather like him in other ways, but he runs down almost immediately to Olympia to be the first in line to submit his bills to be voted on. And the one that he's for is to outlaw horse race gambling. But he's also very friendly to the idea of labor's values, and he strongly supports the limitation of work hours for women. He strongly supported the laws against child labor. He has been, ever since the general strike, he has been mocked by people. And he was not just mocked by historians. He was mocked at the time. He was considered something of a buffoon. And I find it really strange that the reason is that one of the reasons is he's a terrible speaker in private, and he gets up in front of an audience, and he's an orator of the first water, and he's magnificent supporter of ideas. And one of the ideas well, let me move on to that. One of his best ideas was to create a town just outside of Seattle called Lake Forest Park. Now, Ole Hansen has one thing about, he's a property developer, one thing he dislikes are grid-like cities, namely Wallingford would not be approved by him. He finds that grids to be terrible ways to develop cities. So Lake Forest Park is laid out in such a way that the roads sort of follow the contour of the land. This is what you hear about Olmsted and others developers. Anyway, it's a forested piece area, and he wrote this brochure. This park is not to be the playground of the excessively rich. Nay, this park, beautiful as the God's mind that conceived and made it centuries before man inhabited the earth, will be the homes of thousands of families. It is the home of Mother Nature, of flowers, of songs, of birds, of the autumn leaves, and of the summer zephyrs soughing through the forest. These things entitle any one to a home place. I'm sorry, I didn't get that quite right. Building restrictions will be enforced against shacks, stores, saloons, flats, apartments, roadhouses, and everything detrimental to the beauty of the park or distasteful to the residents. Well, actually, I would suggest you go out to Lake Forest Park. It's still that sort of place. It's not for the rich, and these are beautiful forested homes. He's a pretty good mayor. The First World War pandemic occurs, and it's the great influenza pandemic, and he puts it down. He restricts it in Seattle by closing down churches and schools and games like baseball, and by closing theaters, as you can see in this picture. Another thing that he does as mayor is he buys the transit system in Seattle, and historians have generally said that he paid too much for the system, but he helped develop City Light, and the other sort of, quote, socialist developments that Seattle now is quite proud of. This is him on a tram crossing the University Bridge the day that it opens. So the major thing that's going on in Seattle is the shipyards. And shipyards to build military freighters is not a very good business in 1919. It was a very good business in 1918, but this is the largest of the shipyards. It's Skinner and Eddy, and if you were wondering where it was right down between, on the waterfront, where just to the west of the stadiums. Seattle had high production costs. The cost has always been higher in Seattle, it is today, and it never attracted many manufacturing businesses. But shipyards survived because it was the government and the wartime business, and the Seattle shipyards were very efficient, and but at the end of the war, there's time is running out on them. This is what's happening in a shipyard, riveting sheets of steel together. In 1916, there were about 1,600, within maybe 100 or so, workers in the shipyard. That's before the war. In 1918, there are 35,000. So you have an idea of what's going on in Seattle from that. This is about 25% of the people who are gainfully employed. And when I say gainfully employed, I mean and not just people who get a wage, but people who are entrepreneurs. Of the 3,000 or so, 300,000 or so people in Seattle, there are about 1,500 people who are gainfully employed. And in January of 1919, 35,000 have shrunk to 25,000 because workers can figure this out too, that working in a shipyard is not a good idea at the end of the war. And they want to get out before everybody gets out. And so the shipyards are shedding workers. And there are a few more ships still contracted by the government. And there's the question, not like almost nowhere described, although it should be, is are those ships going to be built? Why would the government build ships for a war that is over? And the answer, of course, is there's no reason. So this shipyard issue is going to be the issue that creates the general strike. You were worried, I can see, about Rosie the Riveter. She's here, that's her, in Tacoma. And shipyard workers, for the most part, make about $5 a day. Some people out who don't work for the shipyard think that's a pretty good wage. The shipyard workers say it's not a good wage because everybody else in the country gets $5 an hour and they don't have the high costs of living. And so we want our wages to go up, and we're going to go on strike to get it. You can realize that asking for an increase in wages for to build ships that the government now doesn't want is not a reasonable expectation. And so there's a real problem at the center of this whole idea of the general strike. When I say shipyard workers are well paid at $5 an hour, I've seen that one place is that policeman in Seattle made about $4.25 an hour. I shouldn't say an hour, per day. The other thing that's connected with shipyard workers is not everybody likes them. A lot of people think that they're driving up the wages in Seattle. Other people think that they are simply draft dodgers because they get deferments to work in the ship, and that's certainly true. And the shipyard workers think that they're being taken advantage of in Seattle because there isn't enough housing and that they have to pay too much for it. So this is the normal trouble of a wartime economy. The party that they have to appeal to get higher wages is a corporation that has been was created by the government to build ships, and it's run by a man named Pease. And so that's what you see here. Pease may offer to settle today. Well, the Pease doesn't want those ships, and so he's trying to figure out ways of closing down these shipyards and with the least amount of blowback. And so when it says that he's going to settle today, the shipyard workers think that they are going to get some sort of offer. But actually, what's going to happen in the background is that Pease is going to try and find ways to collapse the shipyards. And so he sends a telegram to Seattle, and it's sent to the MTA. The MTA is an owner organization. It stands for Metal Trades Association. And the telegraph man, or deliverer, sends it to the MTC, which is the Metal Trades Council, which is a labor organization. And labor realizes that they are being bamboozled by Pease, and that they're going to go on. They are definitely going on strike. The owners don't want to be around. The owners of the shipyard, Skinner and Eddy and the others, don't want to be around for this, and the depart for California so that nobody can reach them. So there's also trouble within the shipyard that I have, that $5 is the bottom end of the pay scale. There are people who work for $8 an hour, people that Anna Louise describes as owning silk shirts. Okay, so there's trouble between the $8 an hour people and the $5 an hour people because the shipyard owners want to keep employing the $8 an hour people.
Paul, is that hour or day?
Excuse me, $8 a day people, thank you. Those are the people that will rebuild the shipyards at the end of the war. $8 people, the ones with skills. The $5 people, are just war workers, the last people hired. Okay. This is the departure from the shipyard. They've gone on strike, and everybody is leaving as fast as they can. And for some reason, it's declared that a strike is called, that all unions will be out. Why they're saying this before all unions have gone out in support of the shipyard workers is not clear. And by calling everybody out on strike, that is, firemen, workmen of every sort, people in laundries, people in bakeries, people collecting garbage, means that the strike isn't really against the U.S. government anymore. It's against the city of Seattle. And the intention, if there is one, is that it's going to make things so difficult for the city of Seattle that the government in Washington, D.C. is going to capitulate. Well, I don't think so. This is an image, I think a self-image of how labor at the time thinks of itself. It probably is no longer a useful image to have, but the labor sees itself as universally supported. But the more interesting part of this, for me, is that labor, this strong, stocky guy, just has to fold his arms and say no, and the business behind him will close, that the industrialists, they can't build ships. They don't know how to do anything. They can, and so they assume that that they have really more power than they actually have. This is Anna Louise Strong in a more typical picture of the time. She's employed by the Seattle Union Record. She's a militant backer of labor dominance, and she's a promoter of the Russian Revolution, which has just occurred. That is a year and a half or so before. They know all the news of the Russian Revolution is not just limited to the people in unions. I mean, everybody in Seattle knows about the Russian Revolution, and they have made some choice about which side they are on. She publishes Lenin's speeches. She's not the publisher of the newspaper, but she is the main editor. And she's also involved in some strange ship that has no idea what's going on. It's a Russian ship that sails into Seattle with a load of licorice. And being a Russian ship, it immediately gets a huge amount of attention before anybody knows what's on the ship. And they embargo the ship and force it out of port. And the union, or Anna Louise Strong and such, write it up, and they also at night go down to the ship and get on the ship, and people from the ship sneak into the shore and things like that. Or at least there are rumors to these effect. And so this is what, so the Russian Revolution is haunting Seattle through most of these events. As we approach as the strike is talked about, there are some people who want it to occur immediately after the shipyard strike. No waiting about, and no exclusions from walking out. That is, you can't. Everybody has to go out, and they will go out immediately. Well, better minds prevail on this and say, no, you can't do without firemen. You know, just it's crazy. The city's a wood city. It'll just simply go up in flames with the first match. And so they decide that they're going to put this off for a couple of weeks. And so there's some time during which the newspaper carries, particularly the Seattle Union Record, carries stories to try and bring up enthusiasm for a general strike. And so she writes, we are undertaking the most tremendous move ever made by labor in this country. And I think she's right. There are certainly bigger strikes and in the East, certainly the ones having to do with coal and steel. But in terms of ambition, that is a revolution, this is tremendous, she says. And she says, we do not need hysteria, we need the iron march of labor. I'm not sure what that is, but iron march of labor. And then she has these three things that the labor will do. Labor will feed the people, and they do. When the strike occurs, they will feed it. Labor will care for the babies and the sick, and they do. They set up milk depots to distribute milk, and they keep some of the hospital running. And labor will preserve order, which gets us to how will they do that? Will they find 300 people with some police experience, mostly from the military, and who will wear white armbands and represent labor during the strike? And their duties will be to stop traffic. They really intend to bring the city to a halt. They're going to stop traffic. They will also disperse labor meetings of workers on the street. So, because in addition to getting them out on the street, labor leaders realize there's a problem of workers on their own, just choosing what they want to do, and so the leaders want them dispersed, and they will this labor guard will replace the police. Well, this of course has the city worried, and the police force is basically of course the first act of government. I have here but the most important parties that will go out are the streetcars, the people who run the streetcars. There are not a whole lot of cars around at the time, automobiles around at the time, but streetcars are the way that people get home. And most people live downtown. Some neighborhood like Wallingford is very sparsely populated, even though it has already been laid out. Jitney drivers, those are those big open cars with seats for 10 people, or Teamsters will go out, and of course the shipyard workers and everybody else that they can convince. The non-strikers are important too. No government worker can go out without losing his job. So that's national workers, state workers, city workers, schools, firemen, and others. The major stores, we have 4 major department stores in Seattle, and they stay open. The public markets, like this Pike Place Market, stays open. The banks, I think, stay open as well. And neighborhood groceries, like all these little square buildings that you see on corners around Seattle, all of those are leftover grocery stores, and they stay open as well. One of the mistakes that labor makes, really unintentionally, is they won't reply to the question, when is the strike going to be over? And if the strike isn't over, then the strike persists and becomes the everyday event of the future. In short, if it's permanent, it's a type of not being over, is a form of revolution. It certainly worries a lot of people in Seattle. She goes on to write, labor will not only shut down the industries, but labor will reopen them under unions to preserve health and peace. Quote, if the strike continues, labor may feel led to avoid public suffering by reopening more and more activities under its own management. Here we are talking revolution at this point. And that is why we say we are starting on a road that leads. No one knows where. And no one knows where becomes the critical point. It's her way of suggesting that it leads to revolution, of course. So, 65,000 people will walk out. I'm just jumping ahead to historians. Historians have said 60,000. Oh, well, maybe it's 100,000, because they'll convince those 60,000 that go out, 25,000 or 30,000 are shipyard workers. They'll convince somebody else to go out with them. So let's call it 100,000. Others have said, why call it 100,000 when really it's probably more like 300,000? Well, that's the city of Seattle, of course. And then others have written, and I think this is a typo error that historians, the best historical journal in the area around 600,000, because they wanted to think of big numbers. Well, anyway, my thinking is that people found all sorts of ways of not taking part in strikes, like not showing up for work, to name one. And I think it's probably more on the order of 50,000, maybe as low as 25,000. People have disappeared from Seattle, of course. The 35,000 original workers had declined to 25,000. Portland newspapers write about people showing up in Portland looking for jobs. So, no one knows what this number is, but it's not 300,000. Okay, so when the strike is imminent, and those 2 weeks between the shipyards walking out and the planned beginning of the strike, people waste a lot of time during those 2 weeks, and then they start getting worried, and they start running to hardware stores to get kerosene lamps, of course, and to get camping cots. And I wondered about this for years. Why would they get camping cots? And then I was reading one real estate person write about his experience. He was the biggest realtor in Seattle. He had 12 men working for him, and he described as 12 men sitting by their desks with shotguns on their lap. And what that meant to me is he planned to stay there. He had them staying there all night. And so he got whitewash for the windows, and he got cots for them to sleep on. Okay. people at home started filling their bathtubs full of water because water is pumped uphill to tanks and reservoirs so that there's water pressure. And if there isn't electricity, they won't be pumping water. Here are my cots and kerosene lamps. People started leaving Seattle, the well-to-do, as here, and moving to Portland for the duration. If you could imagine that. The porter seems to be checking out the fine ladies and books. This is the most popular leaflet on this. Leafleting becomes, of course, a huge part of this strike, and this is the most popular one that was on the Union side. Russia did it. Did what? Of course, have a revolution. Why can't we? We can do it. And so revolution is on their minds. And as you can see, there, if you could read a little bit of this, there's both a moral and an intimidation factor that's involved. Moral because this pitiful little pipsqueak of an entrepreneur protecting his pile of money doesn't deserve any of that money. He didn't earn it. The guy on the right earned it. But the guy on the right, it's surprising to me in a union ad, not a union, but a leftist ad, is a thug. He's not, he's not talking morals with this pipsqueak. So there's both a moral and an intimidation factor. Also, in the background, and this has been not really part of almost any historical account, is a group called Soldiers, Sailors, Workers' Councils. And those people, that name itself is derived from the Russian situation where those are the cells that the communists create for taking over Russia. And the councils are revolutionary. They're intended to be working out of a sort of a mass, out of a leadership that will direct them all, but they're small enough that they don't that they can't be broken. That one cell won't lead to another cell to another cell. You'll see a little bit more about this. This is I'm not going to try and pronounce his first name. Beck, who runs the Bon Marché, one of the 4 big department stores in Seattle. And he sends spies into these soldier, sailor, worker cells. Remember, soldier, sailor, workers was the name of those posters in World War I. The Unions, he finds out that the Union has been smuggling books into Canada. We smuggled fentanyl, but they smuggled books. The soldiers, and at one of these meetings, it's recorded by one of his spies that the people that they intend to kill the U.S. labor representative in Seattle. I don't think that was ever possible. I don't think they believed that was going to happen. I think they didn't think the people in these cells were reliable enough at any activity. Anyway, both sides had broken into each other's because they all realized they couldn't live without operators during the strike, and so there was a dispensation for operators. And the operators could listen on anybody's phone call, and since they all had families, they had different views of what whether there should be a strike or a revolution, and so it's realized in Seattle that this strike may be just a description of a labor takeover in the form of Russian intent, Russian shape. And so it says, under which flag, meaning, are we going to have a Russian revolution? And there are other people who simply say, look, America is not Russia. And Hansen is a very excitable person, and he talks about summary action, meaning shooting anybody who does anything revolutionary in Seattle. They create a 3-person arbitration board for between the union and Hansen. It immediately gives up. It realizes it can do nothing. Why did Anna Louise Strong hate Hansen? Well, this is an interesting. One day, Hansen has to come to a meeting with labor, and she's and he runs into her first, and he says, Anna Louise, that is the prettiest blouse I've ever seen. Can you tell me where you bought the material? My wife would love to make another one. She never forgave him. Hansen meets the committee that he's supposed to talk to has 300 members. And if I can hold you over a little bit, maybe I can get this done. The 300-member committee, of course, is a failure of an idea. It has a 15-person executive that should give it a little better chance of working, except the 300 people continually overrule the 15-member, because the 15 members' leadership, and if you remember, leadership, they are red in the ranks and yellow in office. And so the executive committee is never often followed. And so on the last day, he goes in to talk to this group of unionists, and he is there through the late part of the day into the evening till 3 in the morning until he finally walks out. He can't get what he wants, and all that he wants at this point is that the electricity stay on. He's not worried about 300 people taking over the police functions of the city. He has 2,500 people at his beck and call. The normal number of policemen in Seattle is 500. They're already there, and there are more so he has 500 policemen against their 300 policemen, plus his deputies, plus irregulars, plus students from the university, plus people, and on and on. So he's got the forces is with him. And he has, of course, he promises that he'll use martial law, which he actually can't do. But there are soldiers who seem to be willing to work for him, and I don't understand what the connection is on that. And I haven't mentioned Leon Green. Leon Green is the shadowy, mysterious person behind all these events. There is no photograph of Leon Green. There's a description of him that he's a big man, even suggesting on the fat side. He has dark features. Some people think that he is from Russia. Some people think that he just knows how to speak Russian. And he is the most radical person around. He is the person who manages to, I think, manages to convince the people meeting the train that there's going to be a general strike. He is the person who gets these 110 separate unions to fall into line and agree to support the shipyard workers. And I'll give you one, he has 8 laundresses who are willing to go into the union meeting which is going to involve about 200 people, and shout down the majority, and gets the laundresses to agree to go out on strike with him. And he is the most uncompromising of people. And his only position is he's the business agent for the electrical union. The one union, of course, the union, of course, that Hansen most desperately needs to get him through the night. Hansen doesn't want the lights to go out in Seattle, and this union official is saying they're going to go out. Okay. So here's the electrical power station, and every one of you probably has driven by it maybe without knowing what it is. But anyway, it's down at the bottom of the East Lake, on the south side of Lake Union. And he puts guards in front of the entrance, this sort of very funny entrance to the, there are pictures of that. Leon Green has been very busy. He has managed to convince Hansen and everybody else that he has the power to do these things. He's just the business agent for one of the two electrical unions. It's not even the most elevated position. He's gotten the 110 support unions to support him. He has rented the Hippodrome Theater and invited the soldier, sailor, workers' councils or cells to come to a meeting in which they were going to get the armies to support them. And he calls for somebody at that meeting from the army to come up and speak to the other soldiers, and no one will get up except the Canadian soldier. So that has failed. And so he plans to get in front of the Seattle post office. You probably don't remember this lovely piece of granite, but he's going to get up there and lead a mass rally in the last day for the strike. And Hansen hasn't got his way Hansen hasn't got his way with his meeting with the union, but he has gotten his way with the electrical workers. At the last minute, he gets them to change their vote, and he does it with the support of City Light leadership. City Light is a socialist city-owned organization, of course. So as you can read here in the upper right, strike inevitable, to set at rest any rumors to the contrary. It can be authoritatively stated that the general strike will take place at 10 o'clock Thursday morning. That's tomorrow morning in this event. And that the strike will remain out until all demands are met. Well, that's a good place to end. Thank you very much. Have any questions? There will be a part 2 next Friday at 2 o'clock, and we'll finish up with what actually happens 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, and what happens to Hansen and Strong with the rest of their life. Strong is awfully interesting. And lastly, we'll talk about any remaining questions, of course.
Will the lights be on?
Will the lights be on?